Alright, so first off, let's add some camera movement. We're going to add mouse control for camera movement in the player controller. So we can open up our player controller right here. This is where we will be writing out our blueprints to allow our mouse to control where our camera will look. But first we need to add some inputs for our mouse. So if we go to Edit, Project Settings, it's the same as going to Settings here and clicking Project Settings, which we've done in earlier episodes. Same thing. We can scroll down and find Input right here. And we have two types of inputs, action mapping and axis mappings. We're going to be using axis mappings because they can have scales, and I'll show you how we're going to utilize that in just a second. So let's add two. I just clicked that twice and I added these two new ones. And we can call them look up and look right. Now we don't have to make ones for look down and look left, because what we're going to do is for look up, we obviously want our mouse Y. So when we move our mouse up and down. Now in look right, we want to use our mouse X. So when we move our mouse left and right, or when we move our mouse right, it'll look right. Now, the mouse Y is actually reversed by default, so we actually want to set the scale to -1. This way, moving our mouse up will move our camera up, and moving it down will move it down. If we left this at 1, moving our mouse up would move our camera down. So we can go ahead and close that. So before we add our blueprints, it's important to go into our L1 character, which is just here in our level 1 folder. And we want to click on our camera, and we want to check this right here, use pawn control rotation. Check that. Compile and save. Now in our controller, we want to add our inputs. So input look up and input look right. And these are the two we just added. Now if we look up, we want to add pitch input, and the value will be our axis value. For look right, we want to add yaw input. Same thing, axis value will go into our value. So our axis value is our scale that we added. Remember, for look up we set it to -1, and look right we kept it at 1. So if we move our mouse on the x-axis and we move it right, that'll give us a scale of 1. If we move it left, it'll give us a scale of -1. And that's how we know to add yaw input for both left and right when we move our mouse this way. Same thing with this. So instead of just me explaining it to you, we can actually hit play and see if it works. Look at that. Moving our mouse up moves us up, down moves it down, right moves it right, left moves it left. But it's very sensitive at the moment. Very slight mouse movements are moving the camera a lot. And this is a mistake I actually see a lot of indie developers do. They don't really consider going past this, and sometimes it becomes very hard to control, and it's a little bit of a grievance. So in our player controller, we want to create a variable for sensitivity, and we will call it look sensitivity. You could create two of them, one for the x-axis and one for the y-axis. It's up to you. We want to make it a type float. Compile and save. And I want the default to be about 0.4. So to use this, we want to multiply, get a float by float node right here, multiply the axis value by our look sensitivity, and plug it in right there. This is where you could use a separate variable for the y-axis and the x-axis if you want, and plug it in like that. So now it'll multiply our axis value by 0.4, so we're only taking 40% of just our raw axis values, and only plugging in 40% of that to our pitch and yaw input. So now if we hit play again, the camera, I can move my mouse a lot further with the camera being slower. And that feels a lot nicer, a lot more natural.